I am Eva Bouchard, and I live off of the Brown Mountain Beach Road. And just now I'm standing where my dad used to have a barn, where he kept the horses and the cattle. And sometimes in the evening it would be dark when he would come to feed. And he would always look for the Brown Mountain lights. And when he saw them, of course, he would call we kids, and we would come running. And we would look towards the mountain where the ridge comes off this way. It was in that area where we could see the lights, and they would come up and they'd go down. They would come up and maybe move over and go down again. Sometimes they would go out, but then they would come back. So of course, we didn't know what caused it or why they were there, but it was interesting to all of us. And then over at the back of the house where I now live, sometimes we could see them from there, and it was in the same area.
Did Eva ever tell you anything about the lights?
Yes, that was one of the first things that she talked to me about. She told me that I would hear all kinds of stories about what they thought it was. And she said, you'll hear that it's a slave looking for his master when he got lost on the mountain. But she said, this is what I was raised and told. And she said, I believe it because I have a fair knowledge of history. Evidently, the Catawba Indians and the Cherokees were mortal enemies. And there was a huge battle on this mountain. And afterwards, the women, from both tribes were trying to find their menfolk that had fallen on the mountain. And according to that legend, after that is when the lights started being seen. Now, how far that dates back, I don't know. But she said, if you believe anything, believe that.
So, the first one we saw, I believe, was down there around the creek, around the river. And what it looked like was a campfire at first. And that's what I thought it was. I was skeptical at first. And we watched it, and it sort of got brighter and dimmer, and then others started popping up. And at first they were all the same color, just an orange glow.
Yeah.
And then the one that really got us was right up on the face of Table Rock. One happened, and it was on the face. So I figured that not many people can hang out on a wall of a mountain and build a campfire, so that was kind of curious. And then they started popping up on Hawksbill, and one of them was not on the face but sort of down the slope from Table Rock was a pinwheel, and it would sort of spin around, and as it spun it changed color from orange to white to blue. And it would speed up and slow down and sort of waver. It didn't really move that much, but it just sort of, I'd say it was like floating. And most of them looked like they were floating above the tree line. And this went on for, I guess, a couple of hours. It was right at dusk, so it was getting darker the whole time. And then the point where I just threw my hands up and said, I don't know what's going on, this is crazy, is when there was one that was down here right by the river, and it had been there sort of constant the whole time, and all of a sudden it sort of flew up in the air and then just darted up the river. And it's hard to tell distance, but I'd say it moved a good half a mile in a couple of seconds. It just up the river, floated around a little bit, and then fizzled out. And at that point, I gave up.
We were watching them play around over on Table Rock, and everybody was saying, just look at them, there they are, just look at them. Oh, that's people walking around over there. And I noticed one light that kind of caught my attention for a minute as it started dropping down, and talking back and forth and listening to everybody else and such. I was kind of watching it every now and then. Noticed it go all the way down to the river, and I kind of lost sight of it down the river. And a few minutes later, it started getting kind of bright in here. And the light came up down here, right up, about 5 feet above the ground or so, 4 or 5 feet out from a cliff. Just come up, kind of followed the contours here as it was going on up to the rail up on where the parking lot was. The people in that area over there were looking at it from looking at us, looking at it toward them. So it was between us, and it was just kind of followed the lay of the rock and everything as it went up through there. When it got up to the top, it went right straight up and just exploded. Didn't make a sound, no great big explosion or nothing like that. It was just a silent farewell, I guess you might say.
And what happened to all those people you were telling me about that were over there in that other crow's nest?
It took about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, but I was here by myself after that. And I didn't figure I'd done anything to them to get mad at me. So.
And that's when they used to park up in here?
Uh-huh.
And what year would this have been, you reckon?
Probably the early 70s, 71 or 72.
He and I and my son were coming down the road one night, and I saw these lights, and you just look, I mean, you could see straight up on the mountain, and I thought it was a plane crashing. I mean, I didn't know what to think, and I said, what the heck is that? I said, is there a plane going down? And my neighbor, Jimmy Pritchard, said, no, ma'am, them's the Brown Mountain Lights.
Huh?
So,
Really?
yeah.
Well, what year do you think that might have
No,
been?
it wasn't too long after I moved down here. Probably within a year and a half. I
Okay.
mean, you know, I saw them, but I didn't know what they were. I thought it was a plane crashing. So.
Yeah.
And you know, the lights were spread out. They didn't have a pattern like an aerial, conveyance would have. But
Yeah.
still.
So it didn't really look like the flashing lights of a plane coming at you.
No, this would be more like when when they come in with their landing lights on and
Yeah.
stuff at the airport.
Yeah.
It's a straight beam.
Yeah.
It looked more like that.
So it was that bright.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was very, but I mean, it wasn't illuminating us, but
Yeah.
it was very bright, and it wasn't yellow, and it wasn't orange. It was like a bright incandescent light. That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah.
But they weren't around very long either. I mean, it was like, holy crap, what's that? And you looked at it for a minute, and then it just gone.
Yeah. And that was on that little stretch of road that was gravel.
Right out here at the driveway, we were just getting ready to pull in, and I looked down there and saw it. I was driving, and I looked up, and I said, "What the heck is that?" There's these bright lights. They weren't enormous, but they were much bigger than they were maybe like a basketball, you know, all right. But there were a number of them, and I said, "What is there a plane crashing?" And Jimmy looked, and he says, "No, ma'am, them's the Brown Mountain Lights." So we just sat. I was driving a Dodge Colt at the time, and I just sat the car down and just watched them. And they appeared to be going downward. That's why I thought it was a plane at first. But then they just disappeared.
So,
And it wasn't a flicker out. I mean, they just were gone.
right. In relation to that tree that's now grown up, that's in the way, in front of us, were the lights sort of behind it or left or right of it?
It was right.
Right
Right
over-
in between those two forked pines, right at the front, right. Pine 1, Pine 2, and then that
Oh,
right in there is where I saw it.
Okay. Were they up in the sky or were they against the
No,
mountain?
they were against the mountain.
Okay. But not in front of the white pines that we're looking at now. They were up on the mountain way up where you said the
Yes.
rocks were. And how long, again, you told me, but I forgot.
About 45 seconds,
Okay.
from start to finish. It wasn't long.
But it didn't appear to you that it was lightning bugs.
Oh, Lord, no.
Oh.
They were, I mean, they weren't huge, but they
Yeah.
were good size. I mean,
Wasn't somebody in a tree with a flashlight?
No. Bigger than that.
Yeah.
No.
Not fireworks.
Mm-mm.
And it definitely wasn't a plane.
No. Nope. And they were gone as fast as they were there.
Huh? Really?
Mhm.
Did it appear to be coming towards you or just hovering?
It was like a hover thing. Yeah.
Floating or
Yeah.
stationary? Did they rise?
Well, actually, no, it looked like they were dropping. That's why I thought it was a plane crashing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Did y'all stop?
Oh yeah, we were sitting in the middle of the road. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, you know.
Uh-huh. Would you say it lasted minutes or?
No, I would say it lasted probably maybe 45 seconds all told by the time I saw it, and
Yeah.
we discussed it and just sat there dumbfounded for a few minutes, and then
And it was more than one?
yeah, there were a bunch of lights. I mean, but like I said, there wasn't any aerial pattern like, you know, landing lights or anything on a plane, but there were a number of lights, and I thought, you know, what do I know?
Yeah. And did they have color or were they just white?
No, they're like a bright incandescent light. That's what I saw.
But it, boy, it's snaky and thick down off toward the gorge.
Yeah.
I had mentioned to you the cave that we had run into,
Yeah.
and to the best of my recollection, again, it was probably at the intersection of the T at the top. I remember we went left, and we went out to the big flat rocks, and we started back on the Linville Gorge side of the ridge.
Mm-hmm.
And somewhere along through there, we spotted a big, a good-sized animal trail. And I thought, well, if the animals travel it, I could probably travel it all right too.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't take the mountain goats down through there.
Yeah.
We did this on foot.
Right.
We went down those trails. It didn't seem like it was that far, and I'm just guessing, really. I wouldn't think more than 200-300 yards.
Okay.
And behind some brush, sort of bushes, I spotted an opening in the ground, and it was sort of it was like the Table Rock. It was a rather flat rock that ran out, and it was just open in under it.
Mm-hmm.
And we got to wondering if we could get in there, and we had a flashlight, of course, and got to looking around in there, and it was fairly well open on the inside, so we crawled in, and when you got inside, you could stand up. And it wasn't that far, probably not more than 6 or 8 feet back in it to where you could actually stand up.
Yeah.
Now on the inside, it reminded me of two different worlds almost. The flooring in it was like water had run through it over a period of years. It was a little bit on the slick side. Of course, it was wet, period.
Yeah.
But you could see, and I don't know what forms of, but you could see round holes, and some of them had pebbles in them. Like water had gotten in there maybe and ground these holes out.
Yeah. How big were the holes, Jim?
They weren't that large, most of them probably no more than 3 or 4 inches.
Yeah.
at
Was
the very
it
most.
a mud floor or solid rock
No,
floor?
it was mostly rock.
Rock floor with
mostly
little
rock.
holes and
Yeah.
pebbles. Any
And-
running water at that point or just wet?
I don't know, it's just wet. I don't remember any actual running water, although there could have been a very slight running water that we wouldn't really have noticed.
Right.
Now, there were much larger holes along as we went on back into that cavern. There were some holes that were maybe 3, 4, maybe up to 6 feet deep. And they reminded me of things that had been washed out. But I don't know that really is what it was, because the rock in there, up shoulder height, was a little bit sharp on the edges, like it had cracked or broken.
Yeah.
But the more you went toward the floor, it seemed like more it smoothed out.
Yeah.
But I'm not a geologist now. They could probably
Yeah.
determine what had happened there. But we during the period of time that we were in that cavern, you could hear what I take to be wind. It could have been water. I have to admit, because really you know, under those circumstances, a lot of things will trick your mind a little bit. I assumed it to be wind, but yet where we were standing, we could feel no rush of air in any manner. It just, the sound of it. And we continued back a good ways in there, possibly as much as 100 feet. Let's say 50 to 100 feet. We didn't, I mean, and there was still more cavern there that you would have had to sort of wiggle around to get into. But at that point, we had run into several rather deep holes, and quite frankly, was afraid to go any further.
Yeah,
Just,
I don't blame you.
just plain old everyday
Yeah.
common sense said, Jim, get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barbara wasn't there to tell me. So,
Wow.
Could you see the entrance light still at all times? Could you see where you come in?
Mike, I honestly can't tell you
Okay.
that. I'm gonna make the assumption that I could,
Yeah.
but I can't.
And were you and Kenneth walking this whole time, or were you on
Yeah.
your hands and knees?
Oh, we were both, you had to crawl into it.
Okay.
You had to get out on your belly and crawl into it.
Yeah.
Because the opening was, it might have been 4 feet high, 3 to 4 feet high, and 5 to 6 feet wide.
Yeah.
And it was just a big flat rock that stuck out, and it was ground under it. And first thing that got my mind was it could be a bear's den or
Yeah.
an animal's den, and so we were a little curious about that.
Yeah.
But I saw no sign of animals
Right.
inside of it. I'm sure there were bats in it, but I didn't see them.
So it was just sort of a small, smallish boulder in the woods that was
Yeah.
sort of cantilevered off
Yeah.
the bank,
Yeah.
and you went up under it. It wasn't one of those giant sheets.
No,
Of
no,
slab.
the rock looked like that, but the rock probably was no more than maybe 8 or 10 feet
Yeah.
wide that I could see, because there was a lot of overgrowth on the rock and over it.
Okay. And you said it was about a little ways off the game trail. You happened to see it.
Yeah, I
off
just
to the
happened to
side?
look at it. It just caught my eye. It was probably, I'm gonna guess, no more than 15 or 20 feet off the game
Okay.
trail.
Did you guys ever see anything you thought were the Brown Mountain Lights?
Oh, yes, in the story there are actual photographs of it. But now they're from across. No, when you get on the other side, the only thing that I found over there that could have been interpreted as lights, and I really don't, in all honesty, don't see how, was we did find some marsh gas that I could light.
Oh yeah, tell us about that.
That is way on down the ridge, going, again, if you go up the mountain to the T at the top,
Yeah.
it would be to the right and down the ridge, down the mountain.
You mean to the left and down? The right end's pretty quick on the north end,
I think we're
and
right.
the left takes you across the slabs.
Okay, yeah, I guess it was
And it
across
goes
that
down,
way,
down,
yeah.
down towards Egg Rock.
Yeah, and there's some little marshes down in there.
Okay.
And that I found
Huh.
swamp gas.
Did you guys have to stir it up, or was it bubbling
No,
on its own?
it would bubble every now and then.
Could you smell anything?
Yes, I could smell it. In fact, that's what called my attention
Well,
to
what
it.
did it smell like?
Garbage, I guess is one way of putting it.
Sulfur smell, like in Florida with the springs?
Not as much a sulfur smell as maybe a methane smell.
Okay. Interesting. And how'd you light it? With stick matches or
Stick
something?
match,
Yeah. What kind of a flame did it do?
Oh, just a little poof.
A little poof.
Yeah, there wasn't really.
Any color to it?
Not that I remember.
Okay.
And what I found would have not, I don't think even if it was burning
Right.
permanently, you could
Yeah.
have seen it from the other side.
Yeah. Right.
That, I do have an opinion as to what I actually was seeing.
Uh-huh.
And the geologist would be the very one to confirm whether I'm probably
Really?
reasonable in my thoughts or not.
Well, I'd love to hear it.
When viewed from Wiseman's View,
Yeah.
I think what you're actually seeing is probably lights that are in Hickory, North Carolina.
Hmm.
The cold, moist air coming up out of the gorge as a result of the falls and the water
Mm-hmm.
comes up the face of that mountain, and it refracts the light.
Hmm.
That is basically bounced on the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And it does appear to be below the crest of the mountain.
Uh-huh.
But if you look at it through a very powerful lens, like a 2,000 millimeter telephoto lens, what you see with your eye would be very similar to a kid blowing a big bubble out with a soap bubble.
Yeah.
And you know how they do this and
Wiggle.
yeah, and they wiggle and they're inconsistent in size
Yeah.
and shape. That's what you actually see.
You could see that with the 2,000 millimeter lens,
2,000 millimeter lens.
but y'all didn't get any pictures of that.
You couldn't, the photos just wouldn't come
Oh,
out. You
wow.
could see it, and what you were looking at was really an outline. You couldn't tell that
Yeah.
it was that much of a different color.
Yeah. But you could see it wobbling.
Yeah,
In the,
mhm, yeah.
wow.
And that's what makes them appear to dance
Oh.
around on the mountain.
Any colors to them?
Most of them were either white or orange, one or the other.
Hmm.
And that was just my impression of
Yeah.
what I was actually.
Great. That's very good theory. Did they appear to come from any particular direction?
No, really
Okay.
they don't. And when you see them dancing, they'll be within in other words, let's say that you took a 30-foot circle, or maybe a 50-foot circle. That light will stay within that circle,
Okay.
but it'll
Just-
wander around.
Really?
It won't take way off over here and go to the other ridge or
Yeah,
anything like
yeah.
that. It'll stay within that area, but it appears to be moving.
Wow. That's amazing. And one of your photos, the one that you had the double lightning bolt striking
Yeah.
the north end of the mountain, had some other lights in it to the right. Were those, you think?
Those were Brown Mountain lights.
Is that right?
Yes, they were.
And that was taken with which lens?
That was taken with I think that was a 200 millimeter, 35 millimeter camera
Okay, from Wiseman's View.
from Wiseman's View. Yes.
But you guys didn't take any, you did not capture any footage, photographs when you were on the actual Brown Mountain?
We did not see lights
Okay.
when we were actually on
Isn't that
Brown
something?
Mountain.
Well, the subject of the interview is an experience I had probably in 1950 or 51, maybe 52, somewhere along in there, when my brother was about 10 and I was about 7 or 8. My parents took us on a drive to see the Brown Mountain lights. As a kid, I don't know that I had ever even heard of it before that particular trip, but we went up there and it was an extraordinary experience. I don't know where we were when I contacted my brother last fall to have him tell me if he remembered the event or not, and he wrote it up pretty much as I remembered it, and said that he thought we were probably off 181. Is that the road?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know for sure if that's where we were.
There is an overlook there.
Okay, I don't remember an overlook environment in 1950, 51, 52. It might not have even been there.
Yeah.
But our experience that night was quite extraordinary and has been something I've never forgotten. The lights did appear and put on quite a show. They, as I remember them, they were about the size of basketballs or beach balls, and seemed at the time to be rather close. I don't remember any heat. I don't remember any noise. I do remember them moving around both horizontally and vertically. They were pale orange, pale yellow, whatever, in color. And I do recall them from time to time moving up 30, 40 feet, whatever, and splitting in two, and then, moving back down. They seemed to always be in motion, kind of random motion that didn't seem to have any logic to it, as I recall. But that's about it. And as I recall, it was for a good long time. It wasn't just something instant and then that went away, but it was for a good while.
Did you guys ever go back as a family and see them again?
I've never seen them again like that. And my parents just treated it as something ordinary. They probably had done this before, but I never thought anything real anything really extraordinary or exotic about it like I would now.
Yeah.
Because they treated it so matter of fact. I wrote my brother without prompting him about anything. I just said, tell me what you remember, if you remember anything at all. And he wrote up a description that was almost exactly what my memory was. So he does remember something similar to what
that was a great idea.
In 61 or 2, some of us guys, and I did have a driver's license then, got interested in going out on Brown Mountain with Paul Rose. Between us guys around 14 to 16, we called it Paul Rose's Booger. It was just a joke.
You mean that's what you referred to as the light?
Absolutely, not him.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy.
How'd you run into him?
Well, he just lived out on Jonas Ridge, and I don't really remember who came up with it, but all of us were just local guys around here, and we'd all heard about it all our life.
Yeah.
So it was just natural for us to. I just called him, and he said, "Yeah, come on out." And we went out. It was in the summer. I remember that, and it was an awful road. You had to have a 4-wheel drive. Had to have a Jeep. Weren't any 4-wheel drive pickups then. So we drove up on Brown Mountain, probably either Friday or Saturday night would be my best guess. And there was no moon. It was dark, and somewhere early in the mornings, 1:30 to 2:30. And I guess about 4 or 5 of us, and some of them people had climbed a tower, and there was one tower up there then. And I remember this point in time because it got light. You could see people, I don't know, it wasn't 100 yards away. The clearing, I don't think it was 100 yards, probably 100 feet away. You could tell what they were wearing, who they were. You could see them smile. And, well, we kind of got scared. It came, I probably lasted 3 minutes, I guess, and then it left. Then it got dark again. And then we left shortly thereafter, and I never went back.
Is that right?
It was enough. It was probably just fright. I remember the hair stain up on the back of my neck. Nobody had any side effects of it.
Yeah.
Other than it was just a rather unique experience.
Yeah.
And then I never saw Mr. Rose again after that.
Yeah.
But the light wasn't an intense light when we were in it. It was just like the moon had risen. It wasn't sun because it was dark around it, but it was just like a full moon for, I don't know, a couple minutes.
Yeah.
That's what I remember.
Was it brighter than a full moon? If you saw?
No.
Okay.
No.
Just.
Because you could see, no, it was as bright as a full moon.
And you're real clear. It wasn't just the moon popping through the clouds.
There wasn't a moon.
Okay.
I mean, it was a moonless night.
Oh, okay.
There wasn't any moon. It was a clear night. There wasn't any moon any time.
Oh, okay. I got
Yeah, right. It wasn't just that the moon was hidden by clouds because it was, from what I remember, there weren't any clouds. Oh, I finished Avery, well, I should say Newland High School, it's just Avery now, in 62, and I went to NC State and finished with a degree in horticulture, and I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps, and I medically retired from the Marine Corps and went to vet school, and I finished there in 82, and I've been teaching at Lees McRae since 85.
Okay.
So,
and I know what you teach, but just tell us what you teach.
I teach in the science department. Mainly anatomy, physiology, and some of the biology courses.
Okay.
So it's just all science.
With all your science education, did you spend much time with chemistry?
Oh yeah, with the general chem. I taught general chem and organic, and I taught biochem and cell biology. So there's some sciences, you know, and I understand the basics of it, and I really love it because it makes sense.
Yeah.
But do I have an explanation for what I saw up there that night? If I look back, I probably didn't.
Yeah.
I probably stole your question right there.
Well, I was going to ask you about any kind of organic or natural world gases that you've ever heard of that might have some behavior.
Have some, but it had no odor to it, from what I remember. It wasn't any methane or anything, any swamp gas.
Yeah.
And I'd heard that story before, but it had no odor to it, and it wasn't as bright a light as a flame. That's what I remember. It was just like the moon had come out for a few minutes, and the light was as far as the size, 150 feet. That might be in diameter, but I know from one end to the other, that's about the distance we could see. So, and it was very bright. It may have been bigger than that.
Yeah.
But when I saw those other people, I thought, no, this is something different.
Staying in the camp lights that they had and stuff. And we walked out a little bit further where you just barely could see the camping, and that's when they came up around us.
And the scientists knew about it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. In fact, one of the scientists was with us walking
is
around.
that right? What did he say?
He said this happens all the time.
He did, so it wasn't the first time that he had seen it. But he didn't know how to explain it. He just said, there it is. Oh my
He said,
goodness.
that's them. That's what he said. He said, that's them.
Is that right?
There's no way possible to get a vehicle where these lights are located, and they were approximately traveling east to west, diagonally from right to left in front of us, and I would guesstimate they were 500-600 yards away when we first saw them, maybe even further. They were small lights. They came closer. They traveled actually that far away to probably 50 to 60 yards, the closest one. There were two lights. They were perfectly symmetrical. They gave off a real soft orange light, and they lit up the inside of the truck and all the woods around us. Never was really afraid, even though I was pretty young. It was kind of a peaceful thing, you know, just an experience that later on, as I thought about it, was grateful to have experienced. You could tell they were together, but they weren't together. They looked to me to be 3 or 4 feet in diameter. They were floating along. As I recall and remember, they were probably 60 to 100 to 150 yards apart, depending on the time, and I don't know how long a time we watched them. The whole experience probably lasted 5 or 6 minutes, which is really a long time. The closest one probably got 50 to 60 yards away. They looked like they were 8 to 10 to 12 feet off the ground. They appeared to be floating along, but again, they weren't tied together. And one would go up at will, the other one to do the same and down, but they weren't together. But they were traveling in the same direction. There was no wind at the time because, again, it was overcast and it was sleeting very hard. They traveled across in front of us, came over the edge of the valley floor there, you might say, down the edge of the ravine down into the gorge. The area where we were, it was very steep once you reach the edge of the flat part of the mountain up there. I can remember thinking, I don't know how in the world my dad and my uncle got deer out here. I wanted to give my gun away and not have to carry it out. It was very steep. So as they approached the edge and went down, you could see that it cast a shadow that lit the top of the trees up. They floated, if you will, down into the gorge and disappeared. We could see the light for quite some time there as they went down the face of the gorge there. Again, a very peaceful, unique situation. Was happy that I could relay this to someone or anyone that was interested, because it's always been fascinating to me, and an experience I don't know but one other person that's been any closer to the lights. So I asked my dad what he thought. He said, "Son, I guess we've been in the woods with the Brown Mountain Light."